And Ben, we're ready to go.
All right, good evening. My name is Ben Irwin. My name is Ben Irwin, and I'm here to welcome you to the City of Arvada's public forum focusing on the organized waste hauling project. I'm the Chief Communications Manager for the City of Arvada, and I'll be the moderator for today's discussion. What we want to try to do with this forum is provide a brief overview of how the program came to be and what the component pieces of it are. And then we have a number of members of the city team to answer your questions about how this program would work if it were to be approved by City Council. If we could go to the next slide, please, Bruce. So welcome to everyone who's viewing this presentation and participating in the forum. Hopefully you knew that we were accepting questions that we hope to answer during this event in advance, but we are also accepting questions via email during the event. So that email address is wastehauling, all one word, @arvada.org. So we encourage you to submit questions you have about how the organized waste hauling program would work if it were to move forward. And we will do our best to cover as many of these questions as we possibly can. And anything that we're not able to get to tonight, we will follow up with the group and share the answers afterwards. One thing we really hope you could do is take a moment now or later and let us know how you are viewing this, what's the platform you're using, either on Channel 8 or via live stream, and tell us any ideas you have for improving this experience. Finally, I want you to know that the recording will be available later on, and we'll be sharing that on all of our communications channels. And you can always find frequently asked questions and a host of other information on our website at arvada.org/waste-hauling. So with that, I would like to kick it off. We're going to have our city manager, Mark Devon, provide a presentation and kind of orient us to the overall program, where it came from, what the component pieces are. I want to remind our panelists, which are members of the city team, to remain muted. And if you jump in to offer a question, if you could remember to introduce yourself when you first start speaking, that would be lovely. So with that, Mark Devon, I'd love to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it, and welcome Arvada citizens who are tuning into this this webinar and this meeting. I'd like to talk a little bit about how we got where we are right now. Back in December of 2018, the City Council appointed Arvada Sustainability Advisory Committee, made a presentation to the City Council, discussed some of the issues that you see on the screen right now. Arvada's low recycling rates, concerns about road damage, noise, pollution, and the presentation was well received by the City Council from the standpoint that they felt we perhaps needed to find out additional information, and in fact, that's what happened over time. Next slide, Bruce. There have been community surveys that have been done in the past, citywide community surveys that identified a appetite for organized waste hauling by our citizens. They expressed issues around favoring recycling and composting, also less noise and air pollution, and better services all around in an organized waste hauling system. So based on that information that was presented to the City Council, the City Council asked us to, as a team, Arvada employees, to look into organized waste hauling. Next slide. The process to date, after the presentation by the Sustainability Advisory Committee, the City Council requested us to look into this matter and provide them additional information during their City Council retreat in January 2019. In February 2019, we held a workshop with the City Council, and the Council asked us to provide more information, essentially to provide a community outreach and survey, some of which you saw the results from that survey on the previous slide. Then we issued, based on that information, the Council directed us to issue a request for proposal, which we did. And we discussed the results of that request for proposal in July of 2019. The council at that point seemed to be trending towards the idea of putting this on the ballot, asking a question on the ballot for the November election, which we presented to them in August of 2019. And the city council then determined that they did not really have enough information in order to ask a question on the ballot. So they asked us to essentially enter into the negotiation process, which resulted in September of 2019. We issued what's called a best and final offer. That's the BAFO that you see on the screen. And we received responses from 4 waste haulers. And through that process, we narrowed down through contract negotiations, the proposal that we ultimately received from Republic Services. And at that point then entered into final negotiations for the contract that has been presented during May 4th, the first reading of the ordinance. Next slide, please, Bruce. So the ordinance that is under consideration right now will give the city authority to bill residents for waste hauling services under the proposed contract, and it updates certain waste hauling regulations that essentially provide more uniformity around the waste hauling within the city right now. So, for example, it would require all haulers to provide recycling services and an annual report, so that we would have basically the ability, regardless of who is hauling, to provide those services to our entire community. Next slide. The people who would receive new waste hauling services are the 32,000 households that are in non-HOA neighborhoods. This includes residences with 7 or fewer units. So, for example, a multifamily, apartment complex that has more than 7 units would continue to would not be part of this ordinance, would be exempt from the ordinance. And then homeowners associations with current waste contracts are also excluded from the program. However, they could choose to join the program later if they like to do so, if they saw some advantage to doing that. Next slide. So here this slide summarizes the services that would be provided. We're talking about weekly volume-based pricing for trash collection based on the 32-gallon, 64-gallon, and 96-gallon sizes. Recycling would be bi-weekly collection. Included would also be 2 drop-off events programmed on the east and west sides of the community at no charge, in addition to on-demand curbside pickup for $15 an item. And then we would also provide yard debris drop-off events in the spring and the fall. That would be 3 fall leaf weekend collections. And then the other service that we want to make sure we let everyone know about is that we would also provide through Republic Services door-to-curb services for the physically impaired. I want to spend a moment talking about the bulky item drop-off events. This is something that has been in high demand for our community over time. It's something that the city used to provide, but unfortunately we do not really have the kind of equipment that's necessary to conduct that service. Through Republic Services, we would have the ability to provide that on an annual basis, twice a year, as well as the drop-off events for spring and fall. Next slide. So this is a better picture of the containers that would be available and the rates that they would be available at. The 32-gallon rate, 32-gallon container is available at $11.50 a month. 64-gallon at $15.70 a month, and then the 96-gallon at $19.90 a month. And all of these prices include recycling and the drop-off events and the leaf collection events as well. So what I'd like to do right now is give you a better view, actual close-up view of the containers. And I believe we have Ben in the council chambers who's going to show you what these containers look like.
Thank you,
Ben,
Mark.
when you're ready.
Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. All right, thanks. So one of the questions we get a lot, or asked a lot, is what are the different cart sizes like? What do they, kind of what is their relative scale? Because for some of us, this would be the first time that we use a smaller cart. So we wanted to try to illustrate by actually bringing the carts into City Hall and try to show you tonight what they would look like. So you can see that the recycling, the program comes, as Mark said, with the recycling included at a 96-gallon bin, cart for that. And then at the $19.90 level per month, you would get a 96-gallon container for your trash. That's roughly about 7 to 8 tall kitchen bags, just to give you an idea. The mid-level, $15.70 per month, is a 64-gallon container, roughly 4 to 5 tall kitchen bags per month. And then finally, we get a lot of questions about what does the 32-gallon look like, feel like. I'm about 6'3" inches tall, so that gives you a little bit of scale. And you can sort of see in relation to some of the others, this is what the 32-gallon will kind of be in terms of size. Roughly 2 to 3 large kitchen bags or tall kitchen bags per week fit into the 32-gallon size container. So hopefully that is helpful in our COVID-19 times where we need to establish physical distancing. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a better idea of what the cart sizes will look like. And with that, Mark, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Ben. We will now resume the presentation. The minimum service fee that has been that's part of this program would provide basically the ability for residents to encourage them to participate in the program, and also provide access to yard waste and bulky item events. Again, this is something that has been in high demand within Arvada. In fact, the last time we offered a bulky item event, we actually were at capacity within a very short time and had to cut it short. So this is something that we believe would be very appreciated by our community. If you tried to drop off bulky items in a landfill or have them picked up, the price that would be paid for that is about $60 to $125 a year. So by offering it through the rates that we have set, we believe we're providing a better benefit to our community. Next slide. So HOAs can join the program and have the bulk service. As we said, HOAs are excluded from the contract because they already have organized contracts with standard pricing. In order to get access to the bulky item pickup and yard debris drop-off, we would be applying an 88-cent per month charge on the utility fees. Again, this would offset the cost for the bulky item pickup. And then also the HOAs can join in the city's curbside waste program at some point in time in the future, as they may decide that that might be something that they're interested in. But one of the things that we believe strongly in is that this new program creates more equity between HOA services and the rest of the city that are not served by HOAs. Next slide, Bruce. So this graph shows the pricing model and how the fees were figured. We are intending, we must in fact operate this program as an enterprise fund. For example, assuming the 96-gallon trash container as well as the 96-gallon recycling container, the charge is $19.90 per month. $16.52 of that is being charged by Republic. The city adds on a cost of $3.38 to administer the cost of the program. So that would recover all city costs, the cost to conduct the billing, the cost to purchase the carts, and other associated costs that would be part of the program. This would, as I said, this would stand up as an enterprise fund. There would be no impact on the general fund or other funds through the ongoing operation of the program. It also, again, covers the, as you go down to the end of the slide, also covers the minimum service fee for the bulky item and yard drop-off events. Next slide. So other key contract points and issues. We are projecting if the council approves this ordinance and the contract on June 15th, we would project a July 2021 start date. The prices would be fixed for the first 2 years of the contract through May of 2023. And then there would be, the contract allows for a cost consumer price index increase up to 3.5% per year. And that's based on an index called the Water Sewer Trash Index. So we would look at that index and work with Republic, again, if this agreement is approved, to determine what would be a fair cost increase. But it cannot be over 3.5%, and we allow for a floor, I should say, a minimum cost increase of 2.5%. So it's got to be within that 2.5% to 3.5% range. We have a 5-year term with an option for 2 additional years. So at any time after that 5-year term, the city can act to terminate the contract if, in fact, there is any concern that we don't believe that the pricing is being fair. City will purchase and own the trash carts and the recycling carts. We did receive a $500,000 grant towards the cart purchase, which was for the recycling cart, so that will offset the cost for the upfront cost to purchase the cart. And we will be providing billing as part of this, as part of the bi-monthly bill. Next slide, Bruce. One of the things that we believe is a benefit of this contract is that we will have responsive local customer service. Republic would handle all customer service requests. They'll be maintaining a call center here locally in the Metro Denver area. We have a very strict service guarantees and penalties for poor service. One of which is that we are asking Republic, or requiring Republic through this contract, to comply with a service guarantee where 99.9% of pickups are accomplished in accordance with the contract, and they must also supply data reports to show that they are meeting the customer service metrics. And if they're not, the contract contains penalty provisions that we would be able to enforce if they're not meeting the service requirements. Next slide, Bruce. So the next steps in the timeline, in this timeline, we did have we are going to be providing some community workshops to discuss the new program. This, of course, is one of those workshops here at the end of May. On June 15th, the City Council is scheduled to consider the contract and the ordinance during a public hearing. Obviously, we want the public to participate in that if they would wish to. So we'll be providing the ability for the public to participate in that. That public hearing will be conducted as a hybrid City Council meeting. So we are making provisions for the public to come in person to participate and provide public comments during the City Council meeting, as well as those that wish to participate remotely can also participate that way as well. So if the council approves the ordinance and the contract, then we will finalize everything with Republic and implement the plan to start in late 20 to early 2021. We'll contact residents to choose cart sizes, and then, like I said, have a July 2021 program start date. Next slide. So I'll turn it over to Ben now to conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the overview. Now we are ready to jump into the questions. We have a number of members of the city team on hand to answer your questions about the details of the proposed ordinance and how the proposed agreement would work. And so we're going to jump right into it. I wanted to just remind you that you can ask questions in real time by emailing wastehauling@arvada.org. So to kick it off, Rachel asked a question earlier that I think is a good way to get started, which is, what is the history of waste hauling in Arvada? Has it always been free market oriented? If not, why did it switch to that disposition? Has this issue ever been on the ballot before? Just wanting to know some of the outline of events since 2011 when we last talked about it as a community. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Ben. So the history of waste hauling in Arvada has been that it has been a free market system, basically for as long as the city has been a community, and certainly as long as it's been incorporated. There has not been an organized waste hauling system in place in the past. What occurred back in 2011 was that the city began to contemplate the idea of an organized waste hauling system as part of a study of solid waste, and to look at how we might be able to improve recycling rates and improve the overall management of waste in our community. And at that time, when the community became aware of the fact that there was some consideration, we did have a number of community members and also solid waste haulers at the time express their concerns about a transition to that form of organized waste hauling. So at that point, after consideration of the public input, the city council basically decided not to have any further consideration of an organized waste hauling system at that time. Instead, we began to basically look at it based on the feedback we were getting from citizens in the community survey. And it was that feedback over time that has seemed to build up over time that the city council then directed us to look at this back in January of 2019, which brought us to the point where we are right now. I'm going to invite Kate, who is a member of our team of consultants, to provide us with some additional background about how this has kind of evolved over time in the region.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here with you tonight. I just wanted to add that Colorado really has a mix of different waste hauling systems throughout the state. We have places like Denver, where the city runs its own trucks. We have a lot of open market systems like Arvada, and then we have some cities that are in organized systems like Arvada is considering. There are currently 11 Front Range cities that have organized waste hauling contracts along the Front Range. These have been in place anywhere from since about 2007, so it's definitely a growing trend in the region. These include cities like Golden, Commerce City, Lafayette, Louisville, small towns like Sheridan and Morrison. So there are some good examples for the city to consider along the Front Range.
All right, thank you. I think we're going to move on to one that has been emailed in recently. We're going to maybe tackle cost. I think as a member of the team, what I've heard a lot from my fellow team members is that one of the driving charges of the project is to try to find an organized system that will save the majority of our residents money on their trash service. So I just wanted to start with some questions around cost. T.O. Sent in a question recently. He asked, why is the price of service so high? I assume in the proposed service. He goes on to say, many waste haulers seem to be offering unlimited service for much less than the rates being offered through the single hauler program. So I'm wondering, maybe Brian, if you could perhaps introduce yourself and perhaps take a first cut at that question.
Thanks, Ben. My name's Brian Archer. I am the finance director here at the City of Arvada. I will take a shot at answering this and then maybe call on some of my teammates if I stumble. Basically, what we did is we followed an RFP process to qualify 4 vendors that then from those 4 vendors, we came up with a best and final offer. Through that best and final offer, we came up with a tiered system. 3 different prices that included recycling. Anything from the 32 gallon that Ben talked about earlier, all the way up to the 96 gallon. We then compared those prices competitively and came up with the amounts that you see today, with Republic being the chosen vendor. When we surveyed the residents throughout Arvada, we saw that the average price that they are receiving outside of an HOA was anywhere from $20 to $29. So we felt like the prices that we received were very competitive.
Thank you, Brian. Does anybody else want to offer more input, or shall we move on to the next questions?
Ben?
Yeah, Nancy, go ahead. Just please introduce yourself first.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Allen. I'm the purchasing manager for the city of Arvada. I think it's important to note that costs in the consumer price index nationwide have been going up around 3.5% a year, with the exception of 1 year in the last 5. Your trash, I'm in Westwoods. My trash is lower than these prices. However, I've been told that when we renegotiate the next contract, they will be significantly higher. So I think how old the contract is reflective of how what the pricing looks like. Every 5 years, there's a jump. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That provides some additional detail. It's very helpful. Just continuing on the costs, you know, when we talk about costs for the services that are provided, I think it's fair to say there's a lot of interest, and there's a lot of different perspectives on the minimum service fee that Mr. Devon described in his presentation. And so, you know, for example, you know, Barbara asked a question, which I think echoes how a lot of people are feeling, which is, how can the city force me to pay a $5.13 monthly fee for a service that I do not use and did not request? And so I would want to talk to my colleagues and say, you know, I think Barbara continue with additional questions about that. There's a number of questions from folks who asked about the minimum service fee. I wondered if we could take a moment to expand on that and just kind of fill in a little bit more detail about where that comes from. I'm wondering, Kate, would you be willing to kick us off on that one?
Sure, sorry about that. Yeah, just for a little background, the minimum service fee, it's very common in all waste hauling contracts to have all residents pay into the system. So it's a lot like a utility in that sense, where everyone is paying into a citywide program. And the way the contract is set up is that the city really wants to encourage residents to participate. But we recognize that per state law, residents do have a choice to subscribe to their own service if they do not want to participate in the city program. So the minimum service fee was really trying to strike the balance between giving community residents the choice of choosing to participate while still providing them with a good service. The minimum service fee does allow households to participate in the bulky item and the yard waste drop-off events, which will happen twice a year. And those are very valuable events. So we estimate that those events alone could save households $60 to over $100 a year compared to taking their waste to the landfill. So we think that those events are a good value. We also want to emphasize that no matter where you live in the city, including in HOAs, there's often, you have to pay into this waste program. So for example, if I live in an HOA and my HOA fees pay into the waste hauling contract, I may choose to use my own hauler. I still have that right, but I still have to pay those HOA waste hauling fees. So again, these are very often citywide or comprehensive systems where everyone is paying in some base service level to make the program run. And all non-HOA residents will receive the benefits of the extra, the reduced trucks off the road and the increase in safety and the reduction in noise pollution in their neighborhoods.
Would anybody else like to jump in on that? Or I could ask a related question. Maybe I'll do that. Barbara also asked about, she says, if I subtracted $5.13 from my monthly utility bill for a service that I do not use and did not request, how soon can I expect a lien to be placed on my property? Jason, maybe I'll start with you, and Brian, you can jump in if you'd like as well.
Yes, Jason O'Keefe, the Customer Information Manager for Utilities. So with liens, we file liens once a year, and we would do the liens in November each year. So those would show up on the following year. But we would not shut off water service. or anything, just lien for trash.
Great, Brian. Is there anything you want to add, or shall we move on?
I think Jason captured it. We just wanted to make sure people understood that we would not shut off their water service or any of the other utilities if they short pay the trash, but ultimately we would, at the end of the year, put that lien on the property. That lien would then get paid by your property tax the next year.
Great, thank you. Jessica emailed a moment ago with a similar question. Is there any concern that the fee for not using the provider could be construed as a tax? The minimum service fee construed as a tax. Tabor requires taxes to be approved by voters. How do you get around that? Emily, I was wondering if you could lead this part of the answer.
Sure. Hi, my name is Emily Grogg, and I'm an attorney for the city. And I'm going to kind of jump back a little bit to the previous conversation about kind of what gives us the right to do this. Colorado Revised Statute 30-15-401 is the statute that provides the city the power to put in organized waste hauling, whether it's the city doing it themselves or hiring a contractor and doing it contract-based. Within that statute, it's essentially saying that this is a municipal police power. When it comes to the question regarding fee versus tax, the Colorado Supreme Court has looked at this issue quite a bit in a lot of cases. Really, the defining difference between a tax and a fee is how that money that is collected is used. A fee is collected and put back into the system to pay for that service, where a tax would be a cost that could be put to the general fund to use for multiple services that the city provides. In this situation, Arvada will be collecting the money, and that money will directly pay for the service that we're providing to the city. So that's why it's considered a fee opposed to a tax.
Thank you for that. That's great. One of the things that Patty asked about is the caps and increases on fees and the costs, increases in costs of the contract. And because we've been talking with you, Emily, maybe you could talk a little bit from the contract perspective about how the potential increase in cost is handled in our potential agreement.
Sure. First, we have negotiated in this contract that for the first 2 years, there will be no increases in cost. Republic has agreed through our negotiation process to hold those prices for 2 years. After the 2 years, there are mechanisms within the contract that would allow for increases. As was previously mentioned, those will follow the water sewer trash index. We do have a range that it can increase. That's anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5%. There is an additional possibility of costs that would be directly related to state or federal regulatory fees. All of these fees and anything that would increase the cost, Republic is going to be responsible for providing the city justification for those increases. And they're going to have to show that for us to increase the cost for the residents. And the reason that we feel comfortable with these possible increases is that Republic has a real vested interest in keeping their prices low. We have a term of 5 years. At 5 years, we have the option to go back out and solicit this contract again. There are the possibility of 2 more renewals, 1-year renewals, but at the end of 7 years, we will have to go out and put out a solicitation and let any hauler bid on this. So it will continue to keep competitive pricing throughout this time. So it is really in Republic's best interest to keep our residents happy so that we continue to rate them highly with their customer service and look at them again in the future for a possible partnership in future contracts if this was to go forward.
Thank you, Emily. I want to just acknowledge Dwayne asked a similar question. I'm trying to group some of these questions when they're similar, just so that people can know that they're being heard and we're trying to get to the questions. Dwayne, hopefully that answered your part of the question as well. Sticking with just costs, Brian Archer, one question Patrick and Paul have offered earlier was, is there a senior discount? And if not, why not? Could you answer that one?
I'll take a shot at it. Ultimately, the reason we don't have a senior discount is we went for different size carts. So with the 32, 64, and 96, it allows residents the opportunity to pick whatever levels they want of trash service. And so we felt like this would help cover up anybody who has less trash. They can pick the lower level of service and therefore pay less.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. One is a question from John. Can you please, I'm going to stick with you, Brian. Can you please clarify how and where it was determined an extra cart price would be $5 and where the $3.50 extra per bag fee comes from?
Thanks, Ben. So those were part of our negotiation process. So when we were working with the various haulers, we asked them what it would cost to pick up additional trash, both one time and ongoing. So Republic quoted the price $3.50 for that additional service. The $5 that these people are making reference to would also include the cost of the cart. So if you wanted to add an additional recycling cart, let's say every week you fill up a 96 gallon. So therefore, since it's being picked up every 2 weeks, you need 2 96 gallons. You may add that, and then the additional pickup fee, or I think they call that the tipping charge, but Kate might be able to correct me on that, is charged by Republic, and then we will have to charge an additional fee related to the cart. And so that is how you get to it's a little bit less than $5, but that is how you get to the $5 that they're asking about. And then the $3.50 is a one-time fee. That would be a one-time bag. If you put out an extra 32-gallon bag, we can provide you either online or in person. Those details are still being worked out, but a tag that Republic will know that that trash is available for pickup.
And I just want to clarify on what Brian said, that the recycling cart, an extra recycling cart, will be cheaper than an extra trash cart every month to encourage people to recycle more. So the recycling cart will be closer to $4 per month, while the extra trash cart will be closer to $5 per month. So either way, residents will have an option to add additional recycling or trash service as they need.
Thank you, Kate. I think Hunter asked a question. First of all, thank you, Hunter, for the kind words about holding this forum. But hopefully Kate's answered your question. He said he regularly has multiple containers for recycling. Sometimes has large garbage bags beyond what will fit in a 96-gallon container. It would appear that your fees do not account for waste or recycling beyond a single container for each. So hopefully, I think Kate's answer and Brian's kind of gets to that answer. So hopefully that was helpful for you. I kind of wanted to turn, because we've mentioned carts quite a bit, and I wanted to turn to some questions that came in around the carts. A lot of people have questions about how that will work. And so it seems like a good time to segue to that. And so Penny and Paul each had questions about the containers. One question that they had was, what do I do if I have more trash than my container can hold? Will I only be allowed a certain number of extra bags? So this is a little different than what Kate just said. And I was wondering if, Jason, you could talk about extra bags.
Yes, I can. So we will have for the first 2 months, we can put extra bags out, and that's fine. And then after that, we will have a voucher program where you can purchase additional vouchers. That may be like for a once or twice a year kind of deal where you have 2 or 3 extra bags. And if not, then you can go into the additional trash can for just under $5 a month, and then additional recycling for just under $4. So.
Fantastic. Brian, this might be one for you or Jason, but Shirley and Paul, I want to know, can I use my own trash can? Can I put out additional waste containers besides the ones that are provided? And what I'd ask, whoever wants to weigh in on this, maybe provide a little bit of an overview of the carts and how that's going to work for folks before answering the question about whether or not somebody can use their existing carts, because I think that will help answer some of that question.
I'll take a shot at it, Ben. Again, this is Brian. So what we're going to do is the city is going to purchase the carts. That offers us a couple of benefits. Number one, it offers us the opportunity to apply for and receive the grant that Mr. Devon and Ben, you made reference to earlier. So that helped us offset the price of the recycling cart. Number two, it will allow us to own the carts after a certain period of time. Therefore, if we do decide to transition away from Republic into a different provider, we will not have to repurchase the carts. Finally, it will standardize our fleet. And so therefore, we will have the ability to move carts around if needed, to recycle them, meaning if one customer puts one in, the cart's still valid, we can then put it back out, and ultimately exchange lids on the carts so that they look uniform across all of the streets. The cart will also be such that the Republic can pick it up with their trucks. This helps reduce waste out in the streets. It also helps reduce injuries and increases the speed that Republic can go through the neighborhoods, reducing their fee. With all of this, we unfortunately cannot accept anything but the carts that we purchase. And Jason earlier talked to what we're going to do with extra trash. So early on, we will be working with Republic to work through that system. And then ultimately, we will be requiring either the extra tag or working with the city to get an additional cart or recycle cart as part of your monthly service.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Kate, Gary asked a question that I must admit I've had myself and I don't know the answer to. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I think that means maybe it's a really good question. Gary wants to know, what's the difference between a trash can and a trash cart? Could you help us out?
Great question, Gary. And the cart is really the evolution of the trash can. So as you may have seen when Ben was in the city council chambers, the carts have lids on the top. So that's they are foldable lids, so they're attached to the top of the cart, so they help reduce litter. They also have wheels on the bottom of the cart, and the cart sort of tips back on its side, and it's very easy for you to wheel it up and down the driveway or kind of reposition it. And so the carts are really the next generation of the trash can, if you will. And as Brian mentioned, the carts are really important for Republic to be able to use the automated trucks. And so the truck knows exactly what size and configuration of the cart, so it can grab it, it can quickly and easily dump it, and that allows them to move through the neighborhood more quickly, which helps us reduce our costs for providing the service and reduces litter. And so that's why we see a lot of communities moving more toward cart and away from the trash cans.
That's great. Thank you so much. I've learned something today that I really appreciate. So thank you so much. Let me see. One thing, I'm going to kind of jump around here because I just really wanted to acknowledge Judy, who says she's watching on the live stream, and we really appreciate you joining us there. She says, and hopefully this will lead to a little bit of more of a conversation around some of the other services that are included here and how they work. But Judy wants to know, it's my understanding that yard waste would be handled as compost, which I support. So maybe we want to touch on that a little bit, but she continues, but I interpreted the contract to say that handling yard waste would not be compulsory to the proposed contract. I have a large yard and lots of trees and gardens. What would I do with yard waste? I'm 80 years old and cannot easily, I think she meant cannot easily haul it to a remote location. Could somebody jump in and maybe talk a little bit about the composting question? I know a number of people have had that. And then also just reiterating how the yard waste pickup will work and just providing a little bit more detail on that. Hello?
I'll start it off.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Emily again, attorney for the city. You know, when we first started this project, there were a lot of options. There were a lot of possibilities of how we could go forward to best serve the community. Staff received direction that we wanted to keep it simple, that going forward, because this is so new to the community, that we wanted to keep it pretty straightforward and simple. That doesn't mean that the program can't evolve. contracts are written with the ability to amend and add different aspects. At this point, we have not included curbside composting. That doesn't mean that it's not a possibility for the future. It's just something that we were directed to keep this as simple as possible and provide the best prices and services that we could. I'll hand it off to someone else if they want to talk about the actual yard debris events.
Yes, so this is Kate. I'll jump in and say if you have extra yard debris at any time, you can add it to your trash service. You put it in your trash cart, or you can subscribe to an extra trash cart during the summer if that's the best option for you. Republic can also pick up some bundles of branches as part of the bulky item pickup. We haven't talked about that yet, but you will be able to request at any time a bulky item pickup for $15. And Republic will pick up things like an old couch or a bundle of branches. So that is always an option. As Emily mentioned, the city did look at a number of options, and as the contract, if the contract is adopted and as it moves forward, the city can explore more options around yard waste or potentially food waste composting as well. But in the meantime, we did our best to offer the yard waste drop-off events, both in the spring and the fall, for residents to bring yard waste. And we realized that doesn't always work for everybody, but we're trying to make the best plan for the most amount of people, and we hope that there are some maybe neighbors who can help you with that, or there also are some companies that will haul just yard debris in the community. So I think folks still do have a few options for how they want to manage their yard debris.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge Rebecca had a similar question about why composting is not required as part of the current proposed service. So hopefully Emily and Kate's response answered your question as well, Rebecca. I want to turn to Kate. You talked a little bit about pickup and answering some of the question here, and I just wanted to ask Kelly's question: will Republic honor the alley pickup for those of us in Old Town, or will we now be required to use the street? She adds, if not, will curbside service assist those who do not have a paved path from their rear garage storage to the street, particularly those who do not have street cutouts?
Alley collection is going to be the default service wherever that can be provided. However, Republic has talked to the city about wanting to make sure that the alleys are safe and workable. So they'll be working with some customers and residents where alley collection maybe is not possible. But to the extent that that's possible, it will be collected in the alley, and that will be the preference. But Republic and the city will work with individual homeowners or alleyways if they are not deemed to be safe.
Great. I'm going to stick with you, Kate. And Fred asked, will the hauler retrieve trash carts for seniors or those who can't manage a heavy cart?
Yes. So the hauler will be able to offer what's called door-to-curb service, which is essentially that they will get out of their truck and they'll be able to come up to your driveway or to a designated location and grab your cart and bring it back down to the curb to service. This will be available to seniors, people with physical disabilities, and that will be negotiated with the city and Republic for those services, and that will be free of charge.
Okay, great. I want a couple of people, John and Craig, who recently asked an email, have questions about recycling. First, we're going to go with John's question for you, Brian, which is, can I opt out of just recycling and keep waste hauling?
Thanks, Ben. Good question. The price that you see includes both. So there is no opt-out based upon waste and or recycling. So what you pay monthly includes both. If you do not want to recycle, you do not need to put your recycling trash can out every other week.
Great. And Craig, that should answer the first part of your question. The second part is, Craig wanted to know if this proceeds, what will happen to the Arvada sustainability site? Do we know if that will remain open?
That question I don't have the answer to.
Yeah, let me take a shot at that one. Our I believe I believe it will remain open, but I think that's something that we would need to discuss with the sustainability management over time. It tends to be a pretty popular program. As curbside recycling increases, maybe it will be less popular. So that may be something that we need to look at. But they've certainly expressed a desire to remain in Arvada. And we would certainly like to have them remain in Arvada because it seems to be a very popular program. The nonprofit organization that operates it does a very good job, provides some employment opportunities for individuals that they may not otherwise have those employment opportunities. So we certainly wouldn't have any plans to terminate the program. We would certainly want to work with the operators and keep it going.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to just stick with you here for this next question. Catherine just sent in a question, which I think is kind of around recycling here, where she mentions one of the stated goals of the proposed program or ordinance is to increase recycling rates and decrease the amount of wear and tear on our streets. Can you speak a bit more about the goals of the project, expand on what, I think a little bit on your presentation, and what savings are you anticipating, Mark?
So, savings in terms of protection of our streets is what I would assume. That is something I think is very difficult to actually measure because in terms of being able to provide maintenance services to our streets, what we do know is that trash trucks are among the heaviest vehicles that are out there. The stop and start manner of trash collection is something that does create some additional wear and tear on streets. Are we able to quantify any amount of savings based on that? I don't. We really aren't. We really haven't had the ability to measure that in the past. But we do know that many of our streets, particularly our residential streets, are deteriorating rather quickly, mainly because of deferred maintenance. So anything we can do to lessen the truck traffic would be something that would likely have a favorable impact on our streets, but we don't really have any metrics to be able to share with citizens regarding this matter.
Okay, great. Could you talk to you a little bit about the recycling goals? I think that was the first part of the question and probably part of it. You talk a little bit more, expand maybe on feedback we've received from the Arvada Sustainability Advisory Committee and things that we've heard some of the other outreach that we've done over the years.
Sure, I'll start with that, and there might be others such as Kate that may want to contribute as well. Right now, I think our recycling rates are around 13%, which is among the lowest rates in the Front Range. So there's definitely an interest, in the Sustainability Advisory Committee identified that in increasing our recycling rates. And based on the experience that has occurred in other communities that have implemented curbside recycling, we've seen recycling rates go up to over 30%. Kate, would you like to contribute to make sure that my facts are correct?
You are correct, Mark. So Arvada's rate is currently estimated about 13%. The city doesn't have exact data on how much is picked up, but that's the estimate. And what we do see in other Front Range cities that have organized waste hauling is a higher recycling rate because more residents have convenient access to the curbside recycling. And what we see across the country is that when residents have a curbside recycling cart, they use it more often than they would use a drop-off center. And so that generally tends to lead to the increase in recycling. The city will also be offering the yard waste drop-off and the bulky item drop-off events, which may also help increase some of that recycling rate as well.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit more about there's a number of questions about the nature of the agreement, some of the details of what's covered. And I want to, for example, Jim asked, how was Republic selected? I'm wondering, Brian, if you could get the conversation started a little bit around the criteria and the selection process. And then there's a couple of follow-up questions that maybe helpful to ask as well. But could you start by telling us a little bit about the process for selecting Republic as part of this proposed agreement and more information about that?
Sure, Ben, thank you. Mr. Devon touched briefly on it in his presentation and spoke about kind of the timeline. I'll shorten it by just saying the city went through an RFP process, reached out to all of the trash haulers that we were aware of in the city. I think that number was 9, and invited them to reply to our RFP. In the RFP, we created multiple requirements. We used help with our outside consultants, Kate being one of them. We also used input from the Sustainability Committee, input from various surveys that we had done, the citizen survey, Ben, you made mention of, and put together the criteria for the RFP process. 4 trash haulers responded. We then went through each one of those 4 and qualified them. Every one of them was qualified to provide the services that we were requesting. We then asked each hauler to prepare a best and final offer. Mr. Devon spoke to that a little bit earlier. Once that process was done, the committee went through each one of their responses, scored them individually. The scores were then tabulated, and ultimately Republic was found to be the best and most responsive bidder. That is how we ended up with Republic and the prices that you see today.
That's excellent. Thank you. I guess it begs the question, Catherine, Catherine also asked a great question. Why doesn't the city of Arvada start its own sanitation program instead of contracting with a third party? Why did we go with that option, Brian?
Well, Mark, let me say something really quick and then you jump in, okay? Risk management is under my department, and every time I bring this up, they run outside the door. But ultimately, starting your own trash service is very difficult. And I think part of the conversation we had was this is the best option that we have available for us today. Mr. Devon, would you like to add to that?
Brian, I think you covered it very well. And the only thing I would add is that as a city, if we see a service that needs to be provided and there are credible and well capitalized and well qualified private sector partners that are able to provide that service, it would be our first inclination to see if we can create that public-private partnership in order to have the service delivered. And as a city, if we were to start from ground zero with a waste hauling service, it would be an enormous capital expense and create the need to hire additional city employees and things along those lines. When we have options in the private sector that can do the job just as well, in fact, frankly, better than we can. So that's why we are not considering anything like that.
Excellent. So for a moment, hypothetically, if we move forward with an organized waste hauling system, I think we're getting a lot of questions around customer service. How will, Dwayne would like to know, how will the city be assured of acceptable levels of customer service? Kate, hoping maybe you could take a stab at this one. And then there's a couple of follow-up questions as well.
Sure, Dwayne, that's a great question, and that's something that the city definitely heard very clearly from residents in the community survey about waste hauling, was the concern about good customer service and good service quality. So the city was able to negotiate with Republic a 99.9% service guarantee, which recognizes that sometimes things do happen, but that Republic will be held to meeting a very high quality standard of pickups. So what that means is if Republic misses 0.1% of the pickups, the number of homes that are picked up every week, then they can be fined $1,000 for missing just the 0.1%. And then they can be fined up to $2,000 for missing more than 0.15%. So there are definitely strict financial penalties in place to correct for those service errors and to maintain that really high level of customer service. I also wanted to mention that there are fines in place for Republic if they do not resolve that there was a missed pickup. So the idea is that if your household was missed, you can call in and then we'll be able to send somebody back out to correct that. And that is always the goal. Republic will be the one in charge of answering all of the customer service calls, and there will be a local person, so not a national call center, but an actual local person in a Denver regional office during normal business hours, Monday through Friday, where residents can call and have questions about service or the rates or the options available to them. And then outside normal business hours, there'll also be other support, a call center, and a voicemail system. But we're happy to say that there will be a local live person for folks to talk to who have complaints. And there's an extensive list of customer service principles as part of the contract. Things like striving to address the issue on the first phone call, and other just good customer service principles. And I'll let anybody else jump in if they want to talk more specifically about any of those.
Yeah, I was wondering maybe, Nancy, if you could expand. There's a couple of questions. Barbara, I think what you just said, Kate, answers Barbara's question about will the city fund an office to deal with complaints, concerns, et cetera. Sounds like Republic will be managing that. But will the office, I'm wondering if Nancy could take a moment to explain more about what actions we might take. Barbara wants to know, will the office be able to take prompt, effective action to correct measures? Patty, for example, Patty asks, will I get a refund if my trash is not picked up? So some specific examples, and I was wondering, Nancy, if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, thank you. I'm Nancy Allen. I'm the purchasing manager for the city. The office will be operated from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. From a local office here in Colorado. During the off hours, there will be a national call center that will take the calls and forward those calls in the morning to the local center. The customer service department that's operated locally will be 100% responsible for the reporting, as well as the responsiveness of the local center. We have metrics in place that I think Kate talked about pretty extensively that are reported, that we use to constantly assess, probably, if not on a weekly basis, possibly even a daily basis, that we use to assess how this is going. Now, a refund for service that isn't being done properly is not going to be issued directly to an individual resident. That's going to be a fee that the city assesses if we're forced to do so. More likely, we're going to be using those metrics to really be on making sure that Republic is managing their personnel properly and getting out there that same day if we get a complaint that has to be managed properly. And we will have a person that's on that.
Great. Patty offered another, for instance, earlier. If a hauler damages my property and refuses to repair it, what recourse do I have? Do you have any insight into that question, or is that something that we'd have to think more about?
Brian, that's a risk management question. My boss, Brian Archer, is the finance director. He also manages purchase.
Emily will help us on that. She's our lawyer, so she helps us with all of these claims.
Yeah, I'll jump in because we actually have a specific section in the contract that addresses any damage to property. And it describes that Republic would have 48 hours to respond and either make a plan or repair or replace the damage. If they don't do that within 48 hours, Arvada can step in, make those repairs or replacement, and then Republic would have to reimburse Arvada. So the plan is that it would be taken care of, or at least a plan in place within 48 hours, and that is a provision that they would be held to in the contract.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm looking through here, and I think we answered a couple of different people's questions about how we can, hold Republic accountable for good customer service. So a couple other contract questions for you, Emily. For example, Michael asked, what opt-out clauses or contract termination language would be included between the city and the hauler? It sounds like we pretty much covered that, but is there anything else you'd add before we move on?
Sure. just standard, Arvada has general terms and conditions that we include in all of our contracts that do allow for a termination of the contract. There are also obviously just the general, if the hauler was to breach any of the provisions that we discussed, that would be grounds for termination of the contract. Additionally, and this kind of goes back to the mention of Tabor, one of the things that the city has to do is we only have appropriated funds for the following year. So while we talk about the contract being a 5-year contract, we have language in the contract that if in the future the city did not appropriate funds for this, we would be able to terminate the contract and we would not have organized waste hauling in the city. There are some restrictions on that, but that is another thing that by law we do have to include. So those are all ways that we can kind of protect the city. So that way, if we're not getting what we contracted for, we're obviously not going to stay with someone who's not living up to their end of the contract. And furthermore, we have a term of 5 years with 2 possible 1-year renewals. At the end of 7 years, we will have to go back out and competitively bid this this contract again. So again, it's going to give another option to make sure that we're getting the most competitive prices and to keep a very, as much as 7 years sounds like a long time, in the grand scheme of things, it really does put an incentive for Republic to exceed our expectations that we've put in this contract. We will also be doing an annual performance review. So the city staff will do an evaluation of Republic every year. And that evaluation is attached as an exhibit to the contract as well.
Great, thank you. One last question while we have you, Emily, in this area. It's kind of a little different, but it's still a contract question. What would happen to the payments? Barbara would like to know what would happen to the payments we've already made in advance, I assume, to our current service provider if the city switches in the middle of a billing period. Could you answer that one?
Yes, absolutely. So we have been really thoughtful about that by ensuring that our initial service date would be July 1st of 2021, which is over a full year. If this ordinance is passed and the contract is approved, that would happen on June 15th. So we're giving all residents and haulers over a year to kind of work it out between the hauler. We've done some research in the haulers in Arvada. We understand that people can pay it in advance, but we also know that the haulers offer either shorter time frames, so you're not paying into the time period where you would be receiving city services, or the possibility of a refund. So we can't get involved in private citizens and a private company's contracts, but we did want to ensure that people would have over a year to plan so they could get things in line so that that wouldn't be an issue.
Excellent. I want to turn to, we've received a number of questions around HOAs, and that's certainly a part of the overall proposal that we'd love an opportunity to answer questions on. So I'm going to start with, I think with Jason. Kristen asks, what happens under this proposal for neighborhoods where the HOA already provides waste management services? And just as a follow-up, Linda says, do households in an HOA still have to pay the $5.13 minimum service fee?
Thank you, Ben. This is Jason again. So HOA communities that already have trash service will have to pay the 88 cents. And with that, you will get, that pays for the billing, that also pays for the large item, and the leaf pickup twice a year for each of those. So they do not have to pay the full $5.13, just the 88 cents per month.
Great, thank you. Emily, I'm going to go back to you. A specific question from Ed. It seems that HOAs are receiving preferential treatment concerning fees. He says 88 cents versus the 5.13, which Jason just explained. Why is this? Are there fees for businesses and apartment complexes that do not participate? If not, why not? Why would they not receive the fee as well? I think is what he's saying. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. First, to the easy part, businesses and multifamily units, 8 or more buildings, under state statute, we can't include them in this program. So that is something that is just statutory. HOAs, the way that we were directed to have this program work is that they would be included if they wanted to be included. And going forward, any new HOAs would be included in the program. This was in response to not wanting to interfere too much with HOAs that have already set up kind of these beneficial services that we're trying to provide to the rest of our residents who don't have the benefits of being in an HOA. So HOAs and residents that aren't opting into the program are actually not receiving the same services. HOAs are already receiving a lot of those benefits. So they already have just one trash truck, one recycling truck going down through their roads. They have the benefit of multiple residences able to negotiate better prices based off of volume of people in the program. Residents that aren't part of an HOA who are now going to have this service are going to have one point of contact for any issues with trash trucks going down their roads. You're going to have the ability to sign up on a moment's notice. HOAs, depending on the size, will have a waiting period before they're able to join the program. And they're going to have the benefits of the environmental, the road conditions outside of their houses. Those are all things that the HOAs were already doing because they pay into a fund with the HOA. We're trying to provide those same benefits for residents who don't have that benefit of being in that HOA. So yes, there are different kind of minimum fees, but it is keeping in mind that while the HOAs are only paying 88 cents, they are having to pay most likely a larger, at least larger than $5 fee to their HOA for waste hauling. And one thing to also clarify, we've talked a bit about recycling. Recycling is going to change with this ordinance, whether you, with the waste hauling, whether you're in an HOA or not. The ordinance does include some heightened license requirements for all trash haulers in the city, and that includes curbside recycling. So one of the questions earlier was just asking about if they didn't want to recycle and they just wanted to pay for waste. With this ordinance, that really wouldn't be an option. It puts it on the haulers that if they're providing curbside trash pickup, they have to also provide curbside recycling. So that could affect people who have costs right now that seem lower than what our program is stating, is maybe because they're not paying for recycling, but those are going to go up because they're going to be required if the ordinance passes.
Great, thank you for that. The next question, maybe Brian could take a couple questions around the carts again and kind of the city's management of that and purchase of that. So Fred says, I see that Arvada is going to purchase and own the waste containers. Will they collect and distribute them, maintain an inventory, and pursue, or pursue missing ones? So there's the cart management, the purchase and the management of it. John followed up with a second question, maybe you could get to also. Once carts are paid for, will the fees go down?
Thanks, Ben. Great question. So ultimately, yes, the city will purchase the carts. We will contract with a third party to deploy them. We will also maintain an inventory that we will provide to Republic. So Republic can then, once the carts are deployed, can then take care of lost, damaged, stolen, or if people want to exchange carts, that will be handled by Republic after they're all deployed. I think the second question you asked, Ben, related to payments and how would the city pay for the carts?
Again, it's once carts are paid for, will the fees go down?
Yes, absolutely. So the program is being set so that the carts will be paid for over a 5-year period of time. We will then spend the next 5 years accumulating a reserve so that in and around year 10 or so, we can replace the entire fleet. So for the first 10 years, the cart price will not change. After that, we will then take a look at what we will need to charge so that we can continue on a revolving cycle for how long the carts will last. So we are, like Mr. Devon said, going to run this like an enterprise fund, much like we would with any of our other enterprise funds. The carts will be considered an asset, and we will appropriately fund that asset and try to replace it appropriately.
Thank you very much. I've got a number of people had great questions that are kind of details about the overall program that's being offered. So I wanted to try to hammer out a couple of those. I'm going to start with Nancy and a couple of questions from Cambry. Nancy, Cambry asks, can homeowners have a dumpster option? We have agricultural status and have a large lawn, garden, and pumpkin patch, so it would fill up at least 3 trash cans with weeds we pull every weekend. And then she also asked another question, which is a little different, but I'm going to ask it in case you know the answer or somebody else can jump in. Can I postpone trash service if I live in another location for part of the year? So if you could answer the first part and either take the second or somebody can jump in, that would be great.
Hi. Yes, Nancy Allen, purchasing manager for the city. I had not considered the dumpster option, but I think that's something that we certainly can work with Republic to get a pricing on. I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that. That seems like a very exactly how this program is set up to accommodate people like that. Regarding the second question on, when you live part-time here and part-time in another place, I also think that would be something that we'd have to consider. Does that fall under the, I don't know at this point, I'd have to defer. We have to discuss as a group with some finance people whether this is a minimum service fee because you are still accommodating yourself to the to waste hauling bulk program and the spring and fall. So you're still getting those services. So I'm guessing I'm leaning toward you would still have to pay the minimum service fee in the months that you're out of town. But I don't want to say that's a hard and fast because we hadn't considered that yet.
There are certainly some things that we're still needing to work out. So that's helpful. Thank you for those. I'm in a section where we have had a couple people with some additional questions about yard waste. And so I kind of wanted to ask these, potentially Jason could get us started. Could you talk again about what the, Bill would like to know, is interested in what the spring and fall yard waste cleanup might look like. Could you go into a little bit more detail about how that would function? Diane also is interested in restrictions for yard waste and limitations on containers and bags.
Yes, thanks, Ben. This is Jason again. So in the fall, we would have the leaf recycling event. We'd have 3 weekends of those. In the spring, we would have 1 weekend. That's what we would do for those. And then I'm not for sure about the stuff. Hopefully Kate can help, but the size and amount that can be dropped off, I'm not for sure about that one. So I was hoping maybe Kate could jump in and she might know that.
Kate, the question is, can this please clarify what restrictions will be in place for yard waste? Are we limited to the containers or can we use bags?
So this is a container-based trash system. So anytime you're putting out your trash, everything must fit in the cart or it will not be picked up. You have the option of paying for an extra bag and putting a tag on your bag if you have an extra bag from time to time. But this is definitely important for people to realize that this is a container-based system. The trash has to go in the cart. There will be a little bit of a leeway period at the start as we all transition toward that. So in the summer, it will be important to make sure your yard waste does fit in your trash container. We have not set limits in terms of what folks can bring to the yard waste drop-off events. So if you've got 30 bags of leaves, we've got 3 weekends for you to bring those leaves, and that's what we're set up to do. So hopefully that works for your situation.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Nancy, I think. Can the city be divided, Carl wants to know, can the city be divided into sections and each section be serviced by one company? And I think what he's trying to get at is kind of going back on the discussion about smaller companies and different, more personalized services. And I think someone with an email address that included the name D. Denker also asked a similar question about 2 or 3 different handlers assigned to 2 or 3 different geographical areas. So Nancy, could you maybe start a conversation about why we went with one as opposed to, in the proposal, as opposed to zones or multiple haulers?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Ben. Nancy Allen, Purchasing Manager. When we ran the original RFP and the scope, someone who's no longer with the city, that's with another city now, but she helped us understand that she wanted to be able to include small haulers. She tried very hard to engage the small haulers, and she set up potential pricing on the original solicitation so that there were 3 different regions of the city, 3 different sections of the city that someone could come in and say, I'm a small hauler, I can't handle this large of a volume, the entire city, but I want to do just District 1, 2, or 3. Unfortunately, and she did outreach to a lot of small haulers. Unfortunately, none of the smaller haulers chose to participate in the solicitation. We only had the 4 large haulers who all participated and all said that they could do the whole city. So we tried, but that was just not something that the smaller haulers decided that they wanted to participate in.
Thank you, Nancy. I wonder if, I'm thinking maybe I already asked this question, so bear with me, everyone. But Anthony wants to know, will a hauler take agricultural waste, such as horse manure?
Absolutely. They didn't do restrictions other than electronics, hazardous waste.
Great, thank you. I'm hoping somebody could also help answer Tanya's question. She said, if I live in unincorporated Jefferson County, can I participate in the single hauler program? How will the issue affect our neighborhood? And if it passes, will we be able to sign up for the discounted rate that will be given to Arvada residents? Maybe Jason could take the floor.
Jason.
Yes, thanks, Ben. So this is Jason again. So if you live in unincorporated Jefferson County and you have an Arvada address and you do not receive city water or sewer with like an out-of-city water sewer agreement, you will not be allowed to participate. Only City of Arvada residents will. So the only way is if you have that city water or sewer, we are already sending you a bill for your water, wastewater, stormwater. So.
Excellent, thank you. I want to apologize to Joyce. We talked about a number of questions. I'm doing my best to try to group these in somewhat of a logical grouping, but I missed her question that came in recently on email about an HOA question. She said, we are a 6-unit HOA with trash but no recycling. That's too expensive. She's wondering if the HOA can get a quote from the city and be able to participate. Is there a way that HOAs who aren't currently part of the program can participate? I think Jason froze there for a second. Emily, did you take it?
Sure. Yes, HOAs have the ability to join the program just as any other single residences would. So it would be a little different. It wouldn't be the HOA contracting, it would be individual residences. And so they would then just be part of the program just like everybody else. We do, for purposes of the program, HOAs who do not want to participate in the program will have to have proof of an active contract with a hauler by December 31st of 2020. If they don't have an active contract with a hauler, then they will be part of the program, similarly to how I just described, where it's not the HOA as an entity, it's just the individual households. And then they would be subject to the same costs that we've already gone over.
Great, thank you. Bruce, I'm wondering if you could put that slide back up to remind people of the email address. It's wastehauling@arvada.org. We are getting to these questions pretty well. We are willing to stay for another 30 minutes to 45 minutes to answer questions here. So if you have additional questions, certainly send them in to that email address. And then if we don't get to them tonight, we will get back to you soon with the answer. I want to go to a kind of big picture question, a big process question. I think I'd like Mark to take a first stab at this. But this is about whether or not this is going to be going to the voters, and a little bit about the process that's before us. Dave asks, Why won't you let the citizens decide this issue? And then pretty recently, Barbara also asked, are we going to be able to vote on this? And so, Mark, I'm wondering if you could kind of return to your overview of the process and speak to those two questions.
Sure. So the city council actually considered an option of bringing this to the voters back in August of 2019, and ultimately decided that at that particular point in time, there was not enough information to really provide to the citizens so that they could make an informed vote as to whether or not they wanted to participate in this program. As we have gone through the process of negotiating and getting the contract with Republic Service, establishing the prices and the service conditions and those kinds of things, and as now the council is in the process of considering the ordinance as well as the contract, proposed contract with Republic Service. The discussion of whether or not this should be voted on by the people has resurfaced, and it is something that I believe will be discussed during the June 15th public hearing. Exactly how the council will decide, I can't say that for sure. We are going to offer them three options for action on June 15th. Those three options would be to approve the ordinance and the contract as it is presented. The other option would be not to approve the ordinance and the contract as presented. And then the third option would be to essentially they would be able, I think, to approve the ordinance, but they would need to, as a third option, refer this matter to the voters with some language that would create some guardrails, if you will, around the pricing and service conditions. So that is still something that the city council could decide to do, and it will be something I believe that will be discussed during the June 15th public hearing.
Thank you, Mark. I've got a couple of quick hitters for Kate, I think. Jean had a question about the fall and spring cleanup event for 2 weekends. She says, why can't an extra truck be sent through the neighborhood those 2 weekends each season to pick up these bags of leaves or lawn and yard cleanup? So I think you've touched on it before, but maybe you can expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, it comes down to a cost issue. So it's definitely much more expensive to run a truck through the neighborhood to pick up the leaves and branches. And so the city wanted to strike a balance between convenient services and has heard a lot from residents that they want the yard debris drop-off events back. Ultimately, we could potentially consider a curbside pickup sometime in the future, but in order to keep the cost low, and sort of in the range of what residents are paying now, the city opted to look at the drop-off event to start with, to be able to provide some convenience while keeping costs low.
We've had some other questions, Kate, about what items are recyclable. Arthur, for example, asked this question, which touches a bit on what you just said, but maybe you could talk about what items are recyclable. That might be useful information. Arthur asks, what items are recyclable? The biannual large item pickup, is that at your house or do we have to haul items to a pickup center? So I think you answered the second piece, but could you talk a little bit about what items are recyclable? And before you do that, Craig had a follow-up question about very specific types of recycled items. Like for instance, he uses an example, PETE #1 recycling that is not a bottle or a jar shape. Will there be similar rules for recycling using the Arvada program?
So Republic will be able to provide residents with a list of what is recyclable, as well as what's accepted in the trash as part of the program. They also have an app that will be available, and they have a website called recyclingsimplified.com. So I can speak a little bit to what will likely be recyclable, but I definitely encourage you to check out the Recycling Simplified website as well. The program will accept what's called single stream recycling. So all of your recycling will go in the one bin. That includes cardboard, that includes office mail, open mail, office paper, newspaper, cereal boxes, those type of paper products. We will believe the program will also accept plastic bottles. So typically your soda bottles, your milk jugs, things of that nature, steel and aluminum cans, glass bottles. So your standard mix of recyclables. There's always lots of questions about which plastics can be recycled, and so I think we'll leave those to the exact guidelines that come out. And again, there definitely will be guidelines sent to residents. There'll be a website, there'll be an app, and there'll be some good opportunity to understand exactly what is accepted in the program.
Great. Isn't it, Kate, isn't it true that the grant that the city's received has some resources targeted to education?
Yes, so the city received a $512,000 grant from a national nonprofit that promotes recycling throughout the country. And much of that grant will go to providing money toward the recycling carts, but about $30,000 will also go toward recycling education. And that group has some great educational materials about what can or cannot be recycled, some really important things to keep out of your bin, some things like, great to give your bottle and can a quick rinse, so it's not all gunky, and so that'll be a great resource for residents as well.
Thank you, Kate. We just got a great question from John, a little bit more specifics into what Emily was talking about earlier. Emily, John asks, in the event of damages or penalties to the hauler and the hauler pays, where do those funds go?
I'm sorry, Ben, the damages to the hauler or damages, the damages that the hauler would pay if they don't, okay.
Yeah.
So that would go back into the program. So that would stay with the city. So if the hauler is subject to penalties, it's part of our liquidated damages. It actually would come back to the city at this point. That's just because Republic doesn't have individual contracts with our residents. We're acting on behalf of our residents, so it would be impossible to put in the contract anything between really Republic and the residents. It's a contract between Republic and us. So those funds would come to us. And at this point, we've kind of mentioned it a little bit, but right now the initial service date would start July 1st, 2021. So there's a good chance that there are aspects of this program that are going to get ironed out between now and then. There's certain things that we just can't see into the future. We can't see how many HOAs decide to join the program. We can't see how many people decide to stay with their own hauler and do the minimum service. So as much as we've put a lot of work into trying to guess and trying to prepare for all of that, as we move forward and through the implementation process, we are going to have to work with Republic to iron out some of these more specific details.
Great. That makes sense. We're getting some great questions now, so thank you everyone for sending those in. Nikki asked, I am not clear on how extra yard waste can be handled during the growing season. We qualify for a small trash container except when we have yard waste a few weeks during the year. Can we get an extra 96-gallon cart to use and pay extra only the weeks we need to throw away yard waste? Jason or Brian, could one of you handle that one?
Yes, I can, Ben. Thank you. So you have to have the largest size trash bin in order to get an extra trash bin. So you'd have to have that 96. And you can get an additional trash bin for just under $5. You can also buy the vouchers for the bags. So that's how you would do that.
Okay.
Right.
And can I add to that, Ben? We will allow customers to change their cart choice one time per year. And then any additional changes will be $15. So under the scenario that you just painted, this person could up their cart from, I guess, the smaller cart, the 32 to a 96 for the summer, and then put it back down after the growing season is over.
And may I add in, Nancy Allen, may I add in again that we do have the spring and fall events that would also accommodate some of that extra.
Great, thanks to all of you. Nikki, hopefully that was helpful. Gordon, I noticed a question from earlier that I didn't get to. What is the size of the recycling bin? It starts at 96 gallons. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm kind of finishing up here. There's a few more questions to ask. So I'm hoping Jason or Nancy could talk, may have been covered before, but Gary wants to know, how would I make the switch in May 2021 from my current hauler to the city's plan?
Oh, Jason, I want to take this, please. The Republic has an implementation plan that is worked out with the city, and we roll it out hand in hand. That implementation plan includes the office that'll be stood up months before any program is actually in effect. That program will include that office reaching out and getting everyone's cart size, their desire for what cart size they want to have rolled out, because we then have to buy those carts. And we just want to make sure that this is very interactive with the residents.
Thank you very much. John is asking a similar question, a series of questions. So we're tallying those, and so we're gonna take a couple of ones that were added earlier, and we'll go back to those. Patty wants to know, what will my total bill be, not just the per container fee? And so maybe, Brian, could you talk again about how it's structured? I know we've had some questions about some potential fees that are, related to legislation and other things. Could you just describe all of that for us again?
Absolutely, Ben. So as it sits right now, it will depend on what size cart you pick. So if you pick a 32-gallon cart, your fee per month will be $11.50. That will include your trash and a bi-weekly recycling pickup. If you choose a 64-gallon, that will move to $15.70 per month. If you choose a 96-gallon, that will move to $19.90 per month. That includes the fee for the cart, the fee for the recycling, and the fee for trash. If there are legislative fees set down, for example, an increase in the cost to dump your trash, that fee will be passed on by Republic through the city to the resident. But that would be passed on for everybody, no matter whether you're in an HOA and you're not part of the city's service, or if you are part of the city's service. There's also a possibility that there will be adjustments related to recycling, and those are the same, passed along no matter if you were part of Republic, part of the city, or part of your own trash service. But as they sit today, those three numbers include everything.
Fantastic. Patty had another question, which was, what does the $3.25 container fee cover? I'm not sure, we're not sure of exactly what she's referring to, but Brian, does that make any sense to you?
Unfortunately, Ben, I'm not certain what Patty's asking there. So maybe, Patty, if you're listening, you can send us a follow-up on that. We'd be happy to answer whatever question that you were trying to get to.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. One final question we have from before, John wanted to know, what was the date of the meeting when council directed the city manager to prepare the proposed ordinance? Mark Devin is our city manager. Mr. Devin, you may not have the exact date in front of you, but if you do you want to comment on that at all? We can always follow up later if we need to.
No, Ben, I actually do have the exact date in front of me. So as the negotiations with Republic Service got underway, as they had submitted the best and final offer, and we determined that, as in the process that Mr. Archer had summarized, that they were the most qualified and responsive bidder, that generated a situation where we commenced contract negotiations with Republic Services. One of the things that we're allowed to do under Colorado law is convene the city council into an executive session in order to receive instructions to negotiators as we are negotiating with Republic Services, and different deal points or issues or pricing points or things like that associated with the contract are identified, one of our jobs is to go back to the city council and receive direction from the city council on these various points. As we did that, we had executive sessions with the city council on December the 9th, which helped to formulate, the contract at that point. And then we had another executive session with the city council on March the 2nd. Based on the information that was presented to the city council during that executive session on March 2nd, the city council then directed me to place the to conduct final preparation of the ordinance and place it on the city council agenda for March 16th. Now, as we all know, the public health emergency basically hit Colorado at that same time. We closed down city facilities and canceled city council meetings for a few weeks. And then following the as things started to normalize and we resumed city council meetings, the city council then asked me, and this actually occurred during a city council meeting on, I believe it was April 20th, to go ahead and present this item for the city council agenda on May 4th as a first reading, and then I'm sorry, on May 18th as a first reading, and then the public hearing on June the 15th. I'm sorry, it's May 4th as a first reading, and then the public hearing on June 15th, which allowed a 6-week window in order for us to be able to engage the community and have more discussion with the community regarding this proposal.
Thank you, Mark. It's fantastic. John asked a question that's been asked a couple of times. He asks, have you determined how you will treat residents that are currently under contract with a hauler? Will they have to pay an opt-out fee until their contract is over? While in the contract, will they be able to participate in the drop-off programs as well? Emily, would you mind just a quick thumbnail sketch of that one more time? I don't want to lose an opportunity to get the facts out there.
Sure. Again, our plan is for the initial service date to begin July 1st, 2021, if this is approved. So that gives residents over a year to work with their current haulers to be able to either stop advance payments. The research we've done, most haulers do not require a contract for individual residences. Now, obviously, HOAs do have contracts, and we can't interfere with private citizen or HOA in a private company. But as soon as an HOA's contract has expired, they are welcome to contact the city and we can work on adding them to the program. And yes, all residents will have access to the bulky item events and the spring and fall drop-off. So as long as you're a Arvada resident, you don't have to, even if you're in contract with another hauler, you'll still have the option to join that.
Thank you, Emily. And David also asked a question I think we touched on, but we really want to try to make sure that understanding gets transmitted here. So David asks, if all waste must fit into a household container, what if citizens can't fit occasional yard waste into the container? I don't have room for a giant 96-gallon trash bin. And he apologizes if it's already been asked, but that's okay. That's what we're here for. So somebody asked what David would do in his situation. Somebody be able to answer that?
Okay, Ben, I'll take that one. This is Jason again. So in that case, you can put your bags out with your vouchers that you would purchase if you had extra yard waste that you wanted to put out.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, we keep an eye on our email address inbox for wastehauling@arvada.org, but we've answered all the questions we had in our queue as of right now. There's been a couple of questions that we haven't, that we're going to follow up with the person and make sure that we understand it, and then share the answer and the question and the answer with everyone. But beyond that, I think we're probably about to wrap this up. So I'm wondering, Bruce, if you could pull up that last slide, and we'll look toward to wrapping this up. Great. So one of the things a couple things I just wanted to make sure everyone remembers is that first and foremost, this forum will be re-aired on Channel 8 throughout the next several weeks. It'll be also live stream, obviously, during that period. And then we're going to make it available on our YouTube channel, perhaps as soon as tomorrow. So it will be there, and we'll be sharing the link to that. And absolutely, we'll be hoping that more people watch it and have their questions answered. You can always go to arvada.org/waste hauling. The URL is there. That's our hub for all the information we have about the project and the next steps. The most important next step is the June 15th public hearing, which is a part of the Arvada City Council's business meeting. That's an opportunity for citizens to offer their thoughts and feedback on the proposed system. And council will hear that feedback, will deliberate, and then perhaps make a decision. So that's a really important day. We want everyone to be aware of it. You can go to the arvada.org/waste hauling website, and you'll find a lot of different ways to provide feedback to City Council about that. And we hope that you'll go there and learn how you can provide the feedback if you wish to do so. Finally, we really would hope that you would fill out the brief survey we have about this experience. We're interested in improving it for everyone. We're interested in expanding our use of Zoom and other technologies to make these types of things more accessible for folks. We definitely were needing to pivot a little bit because of COVID-19, and we're very grateful that you were able to participate. We just want to know how we can improve. We also want to know under what format you actually saw us and saw this event. And the last thing is I have the privilege of being able to thank a number of different groups of people at the end of this broadcast. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our city council and the leadership that they continually provide. I know that I speak for our entire city team in sharing appreciation for that. I want to thank the city team who helped pull all of this together and has been working on this project. You've seen a lot of the folks here, but there's a tremendous amount of other folks that have not appeared on the program tonight that are working very hard behind the scenes to produce this event and to support the project. So I thank them. And I finally thank all of you and the citizens and residents of Arvada for your interest in this topic and for other topics that the city of Arvada is working on. This is a particularly high profile topic. There's a variety of different perspectives and feelings about it. And on behalf of the city, I just want to thank our residents for them sharing and being invested in the outcome and sharing their feedback and participating in their local government. We really appreciate it. So with that, I would wish everyone good evening, and we will close the broadcast. Thank you.